2016 is shaping up to be one of the deadliest years on record for Mount Everest climbers.
In this year's first confirmed death on Mount Everest, a 35-year-old Dutchman suffering from high-altitude sickness died on his way down from the summit.
An Australian woman has died while descending from the summit of Mount Everest. This is the second death on the world's highest mountain in a matter of days.
Welcome, Brigitte. Nice to have you here. Now, you've been on Everest 4 times and on summit 20 years ago now. I think we can safely say that Everest is a lot more crowded these days. People die climbing it, yet it seems that people still want to climb it. Why?
It's the highest mountain on earth, Tracy, and to people it will always mean something. I can tell you, I've climbed Shivaling, we did a new route on it, and you're going to go, duh. But if I tell you I've climbed Everest, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Plus, of course, it's an incredible personal challenge, and that is something that I think a lot of people want in their life.
Do you think that climbing Everest should be regulated?
To me, climbing big mountains is about freedom and personal responsibility. Now, that comes at a price, of course. The freedom, there's nothing like the freedom of being on a big mountain. You really are in the moment because you have to be present. All sorts of dangers happen, and most of the time you can be in a space where you have control of those dangers. You can choose which route you go up the mountain. You can decide that you're going to follow a ridge which is safe from objective dangers, such as, avalanches or things like that. So there's that freedom which comes from making your own decisions. And these days I think that people perhaps have forgotten what it's like and why people climb really deep inside. The Seven Summits has been a quest which has caught people's imagination. I climbed the Seven Summits, completing my quest almost 20 years ago now, when I sat on the top of Everest in 1997. And then, it was something that not many people did, but now everyone wants to climb the Seven Summits. And that's fair enough, because it's a lot of fun to go and climb the highest peak on each continent. You get to travel, to meet people, you push yourself. The routes in themselves are nothing extraordinary. They're really quite, easy routes. And that's where the trap is. Climbing a few mountains on the Seven Summits is not a way to get experience enough to climb safely a big peak like Everest. You have to be able to know how your body reacts to high altitude. You have to be able to know what feels right or wrong. Should I go up? Should I go down? And that only comes from experience. There's just no alternative. Training doesn't cut it. Training is good because it will make you strong, but it doesn't give you the experience you need to survive at high altitude.
So many people are making their way towards the summit on good climbing days, so how does that impact climbers? Are they more at risk of getting altitude sickness?
What happens these days is that so many people go up the mountain on good days from the South Pole, the last camp, towards the summit, that you have traffic jams. And to me it doesn't make any sense, because why have just one road from the South Pole to the summit? Wouldn't it be safer for everybody to have at least 2 roads? I know it's not possible everywhere, but at least it would make it possible for anyone who doesn't feel up to the task to actually step aside and to go down without having to unclip the safety rope and then, pass one person behind you and then another one, which takes forever. You get in the way of everybody who's going up, and you've got that false sense of security, of that safety in numbers. Everybody's going towards the summit. There's that huge energy push, which is very dangerous, of course, because people die doing that. It happened in 1996 when so many people died going for the summit of Everest. And I was actually there. I was on the South Pole when all that happened, so I have first experience of what that safety in numbers belief does to people. There is also the fact that it takes a lot of time to go up to the summits. People have only so many cylinders of oxygen with them when they go for the summit from the South Col, and it might be 3 or 4 or 5 depending on how much you pay your expedition. And that means that you have so many hours to get to the top and back down. That's not rocket science. You've got a number of hours to get up and down.
And at 2, one of these bottles will last you just over 6 hours.
If you go past that, you're going to be in trouble, because you're going to go suddenly from having oxygen-enriched breathing to no oxygen breathing. And the body doesn't like that at all. And that can cause, of course, altitude sickness, pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, which means that the brain's not working anymore or you can't breathe anymore. That happened to me when I climbed Everest in '97. I was on the summit with Kipa Sherpa and Doji Sherpa, and we were there for an hour, just the 3 of us, which was magical. And I took my oxygen mask off and I filmed and I did this and that, which was great. But then I realized that I'd actually gotten pulmonary edema from not having that oxygen going into my system. And on the way down, fortunately I realized it, and I asked one of the guys to put me on a rope to help me down to the South Col.
Just for the record, that's what one looks like after climbing Mount Everest, coming down, spending a terrible night coughing my lungs out, and then carrying a heavy pack down to Camp 3 at 7:2. And now I'm just totally, completely exhausted. I'm going to spend the night here and keep going tomorrow to Camp 2 and then to base camp.
I think it's very important that people realize, who want to climb Everest, that they should get experience, know their body, and find the right expeditions, ask the right questions, and compare, do a lot of comparison, and get experience at high altitude before they get onto Everest, and make their own decisions. Get to a stage where they can actually make their own decisions, even in a guided situation.
And the Sherpas, what about the Sherpas who work on the trips?
On Everest these days you have a lot of people. That means that you need a lot of people to help them. And there are only so many experienced Sherpas to go around. And those are usually snatched by the people who pay most. And that makes sense, you know. Experience is valuable. Now beside that you have a whole heap of Sherpas. And when I say Sherpa, I just mean people who are Nepali. They're not necessarily from the Sherpa ethnic group. They could be from other ethnic groups who live at a lower altitude. So you've got people who, in the words of a friend of mine, are little more than yak herders, turning up on the mountain to make some money for their families. And it's very hard to stop that. Unless perhaps you make it compulsory for all Sherpas who work on trips to get the right experience again before they get on the mountain. But we're talking about Nepal, and that ain't gonna happen. It is really a privilege to be on a big mountain, and that comes with responsibilities. The first one being, you are responsible for yourself, and the decisions you make may cause your death. You have to be aware of that. And may cause the death of other people, which is not a good thing. Because, you know, if you're climbing with a Sherpa who's not experienced, you're going to be in a situation where, as a client, you want to keep going because you've paid your money and you feel like you can get to the summit. You don't know that you can come back down because you don't have the experience to know that. And the Sherpa you are with, who may not be experienced enough, is not going to be confident enough to tell you, stop, we go down now. That's happened before. I've seen that happen on big mountains. It's dangerous for everyone involved. And what is the way forward? Personal responsibility from the Sherpa side, from the company side, and from the people's side who want to climb it.
Thank you, Brigitte. It's nice to get a different perspective on this. Thank you.
You're welcome.